Ethan was a billionaire who had built his empire from nothing. He didn't inherit wealth or stumble into luck. He forged it through relentless work and innovation. Years ago, as a young mechanical engineer, he designed a revolutionary engine that transformed the automotive industry. Within 12 months, investors were fighting to back him. The once struggling engineer became a household name, and soon, Ethan's influence spread from technology to real estate, oil, and finance. By his mid-30s, he owned sprawling properties in London, Dubai, and Lagos. He could make CEOs tremble with a single phone call. Yet, despite all the power, Ethan remained focused on only one thing: building more, growing more, owning more. One sweltering Wednesday afternoon, he decided to inspect a piece of land he had quietly purchased a prime corner at Crystal Junction, where he planned to construct the new headquarters of his holding company. He didn't make announcements. He simply left his office in a black SUV wearing a navy blue suit, followed by engineers and security. When they arrived, his team stepped out first, studying the perimeter, making notes. Ethan followed calm and focused. He paced the property slowly, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. But before he could finish his first round of inspection, a voice pierced through the crowd. "Daddy! Daddy! Please help me!" Everyone turned. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, wearing a faded yellow dress and cheap plastic slippers, was sprinting across the road. She ran straight toward Ethan as if her life depended on it. Before anyone could react, she crashed into his chest, hugging his waist with both arms. Her body was trembling. "Daddy, don't let her beat me. She wants to hurt me," she wailed. Ethan stiffened, completely thrown off. Behind her, a woman in a wrapper was marching forward, gripping a long wooden stick. Her voice thundered over the traffic. "You, this cursed child. I'll finish you today." Ethan instinctively stepped forward, shielding the girl. "Madam, please calm down," he said firmly. "What happened here?" The woman didn't lower the stick. Her eyes were wild. "This devil has been sneaking around my table for weeks. Today, she broke my eggs. My entire crate." Ethan turned to the trembling child still clinging to his leg. "Is that true? Did you break her eggs?" The little girl peeked up with tearful, defiant eyes. "Sir? Daddy, it was a mistake," she said, her voice a desperate squeak. "Somebody threw me a coin, and that bad boy Toby tried to steal it. When we struggled, my leg touched her tray. Just one egg fell. Only one." The woman shook her stick. "One egg," she says. "That crate cost me 7,000 naira. She must pay." Ethan took a breath, pinching the bridge of his nose. "How much? Is it really?" 7,000 naira, the woman snapped. "Cash, no transfer." He turned to his driver with a weary sigh. "Get me a bundle." A few seconds later, the driver returned with a thick stack of cash. Ethan counted out 50,000 naira and handed it over. "Take this and please leave her alone." The woman's eyes went wide. She snatched the money so fast it almost tore. "Better. But let her never come near me again." She stormed off, muttering curses. Ethan finally turned to the little girl. "Are you all right?" he asked, but she wasn't looking at him. She was glaring at the retreating woman's back. Then she glanced up at Ethan with a scowl. "Daddy," she began indignantly, "why did you give her all that money? It was just one egg." She held up a tiny finger. "Just one. You should have asked for change." Ethan blinked, stunned by her nerve. "Change?" "Yes," she insisted, planting her hands on her skinny hips. "You gave her too much. You wasted it. Do you have a banana tree where money grows?" One of the engineers coughed, trying to hide. A laugh. Ethan had no idea why, but for the first time in years, he felt a genuine smile tug at his mouth. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Amara," she said, tilting her chin up. "But you can call me boss, madam." Ethan crouched to Amara's eye level, studying her face. She had a small scar over her eyebrow and eyes too serious for a child. "Where are your parents?" he asked. Her expression tightened immediately. She looked away, her thin shoulders stiffening. "My mama is at home," she muttered. "She's not feeling fine." "And your father?" Amara's lips clamped shut. Her chin quivered, but she said nothing. Ethan exhaled softly, guilt creeping into his chest for pressing too hard. "Why aren't you in school?" he asked more gently. Her gaze snapped back to his, sharp as a blade. "A girl has bills," she declared with a tiny shrug. "School won't pay for food or medicine. I'm a hustler." "A hustler," Ethan repeated, astonished. "Yes." She lifted her chin, eyes glinting. "Small, but my sense is big." He studied her face again, a nagging ache behind his ribs. She had that same determined look he'd once seen in Faith, the woman he had loved and failed so many years ago. Do you need help?" he asked softly. Amara's small jaw set stubbornly. "My mama says we don't collect pity from strangers." "It's not pity," Ethan corrected quietly. "It's just help." She squinted at him, suspicious. "Are you a government person?" He stifled a laugh. "No." "Are you from an orphanage?" "No." "Are you a kidnapper?" He shook his head, smiling despite himself. "Then why are you asking too many questions?" she demanded. "You gave the egg woman money. That's enough. Go back to your car." Ethan sighed and stood, raking a hand through his hair. "All right. Boss madame," he said, trying not to sound amused. "But at least take this." He pulled a crisp note from his pocket and offered it. Amara eyed it warily. "How much?" 20,000. Her eyes bulged. "Just like that? For free?" "Yes." She hesitated, then snatched it with one swift motion and stuffed it inside her faded dress. "Thank you," she mumbled grudgingly. "But next time, bring smaller money. People will think you're showing off." Ethan nodded, fighting a grin. "You have a lot to say because people don't listen," she retorted. "If you don't talk fast, life will finish you." Then she pivoted on her heel and marched away through the market crowd, her plastic slippers slapping the dusty road. He watched her go until she vanished into the maze of stalls and umbrellas. His team waited quietly behind him. One of the engineers cleared his throat. "Sir, should we continue with the inspection?" But Ethan barely heard. He kept seeing that small face, the defiance in her eyes, the way she'd called him daddy without hesitation. That night, he couldn't focus on his work. He sat alone in his study, the city lights shimmering through the tall windows, replaying everything she'd said. He thought of Faith, of the last time they'd spoken, how she'd been crying. Her hands pressed protectively over her belly. "I'm keeping this baby," she had whispered. And he, so terrified of failure and responsibility, had walked away. Now, nearly 8 years later, the memory felt like a stone on his heart. What if? He didn't finish the thought. At dawn, he called. His private investigator. "Find that child," he ordered. "Find out where she lives, who her mother is, everything." 3 days later, Ethan was standing by his office window when his phone rang. He snatched it up so fast the cord nearly jerked off the table. "Talk to me," he ordered. His voice tight, the investigator's calm tone drifted over the line. "Sir, I've located her. The girl lives in a one-room shack on the edge of Brookside slum. No father present. It's just her mother." Ethan's breath caught. "Her name, Faith," the investigator confirmed. "Faith Ez." The world blurred for a moment. He pressed a hand to the window to steady himself. "Her condition," he forced out. "Not good. Neighbors say she's been sick for months. Likely something serious. It depends on the little girl's street begging to survive." Ethan closed his eyes. Guilt and shame twisted inside him like thorns. "Send me the address," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm going there myself." Half an hour later, he arrived at Brookside. The place looked like it had been forgotten by time-corrugated iron roofs patched with tarps. Cracked concrete walls painted in slogans, children chasing each other barefoot across muddy lanes. He stepped out of the car, ignoring the curious stares. The investigator led him to a narrow passage that smelled of old cooking oil and damp earth. "Second door on the left," the man said quietly. Ethan nodded, drew a steadying breath, and knocked. There was a pause. Then a weak voice called, "Who is it?" He knew that voice. Even after all the years of mistakes, he could never forget it. "Faith." He whispered. The door swung open. Faith stood there, her thin frame wrapped in a faded wrapper, her hair tied back. She looked tired, but her eyes, God, those eyes still, held the same fire for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Then her hand shot up to her mouth and she swayed. "Ethan," she rasped. He caught her by the arms before she fell. Faith's throat closed. "I'm so sorry." She tried to push him back, but she was too weak. "Why are you here?" she demanded, voice breaking. "You don't get to walk back into my life like nothing happened." "I know," he said, voice shaking. "I know I don't deserve it, but I had to see you." A small voice interrupted them. "Mama." They both turned. Amara stood in the doorway to the cramped room, a tattered school bag over her shoulder. When she saw Ethan, her eyes grew wide. "It's you," she said accusingly. "The rich man from the market." Faith looked from her daughter to Ethan, realization dawning in her tired eyes. "You've met." Ethan swallowed hard. "Yes, she called me Daddy." Faith's shoulders slumped as if the last of her strength had drained away. "She only says that," she whispered. "Because she doesn't know." "Doesn't know what?" Ethan asked, his voice rough. Faith looked him dead in the eyes. "That you are her father." Time seemed to stop. The words echoed in the narrow corridor, bouncing off the rusted zinc walls. Ethan felt something shatter quietly in his chest. Amara watched them both, her young face puzzled. "Mama, what's happening?" Faith pressed a hand to her mouth to hold in a sob. Ethan turned to his daughter, and, for the first time in his life, he felt completely unprepared. Amara looked between them, her little eyebrows furrowing. "Mama, what does he mean? Is he really my daddy?" Faith's voice was hoarse. "Baby, go inside. I need to talk to—" "No," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. "She deserves to hear it." Faith's eyes flashed. "Don't you dare try to act noble now." "I'm not," he whispered. "But I will not lie to her." Amara's lip trembled. "Someone tell me the truth," she said, her voice breaking. Ethan knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Amara, years ago I loved your mother very much. But I was foolish and afraid. I thought I had to choose between my dreams and my family, so I made the worst mistake of my life." He swallowed, his voice unsteady. "Left. I never stopped thinking about your mom. Or wondering if there was a child. If there was you." Tears ran freely down Faith's face now. She covered her mouth to stifle the sobs. Amara stared at Ethan, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. "You left Mama alone," she whispered. Ethan nodded, shame burning through every inch of him. "Yes, and I will regret it every day for the rest of my life." Faith took a shuddering breath. "I didn't tell her," she said raggedly, "'cause I didn't want her to feel abandoned. I told her you had gone away." Amara wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Are you going to leave again?" she asked Ethan in a small, scared voice. He reached out but hesitated, afraid she'd pull away. "No," he said firmly. "Never again, I promise." Silence pressed on them all like a heavy blanket. Then Faith stepped back, pressing a trembling palm to her forehead. "I can't do this here," she whispered. "Not in this hallway. Not with neighbors listening through the walls." She turned to Amara, her voice softening. "Baby, go inside. Mama needs a minute." Amara hesitated, then slowly retreated into the dim room. When she was gone, Ethan looked at Faith. "I swear, I didn't come to hurt you again," he rasped. "I just wanted to help." Faith let out a hollow laugh, wiping her wet face. "You think you can just show up after 7 years, throw money around, and fix this?" "No," he said quietly. Nothing can fix what I did, but I can start making it right." She pressed her lips together to stop them from trembling. "I don't want your charity, Ethan. It's not charity," he insisted. It's responsibility and love." Faith shook her head and turned away, breathing hard. "You lost the right to call it love the day you walked out." Ethan closed his eyes, fighting the urge to grab her hand. "Then I'll earn it back," he said hoarsely. "However long it takes." Faith didn't answer. She just sank down onto the wooden step, burying her face in her hands. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Faith didn't speak to Ethan for the next 2 days. She avoided him, completely locking herself in the room whenever he came by, refusing the food he sent, ignoring every gentle knock. But Ethan came anyway. Every morning, he'd bring fresh fruit, medicine, a little gift for Amara, storybook, a coloring set, a soft new blanket. And every evening, he would sit outside their door on the rickety wooden bench, waiting. He never demanded an answer. He never raised his voice. He just waited. On the third morning, Faith finally cracked the door open, her eyes red and swollen. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Ethan stood, startled. "Because I can't leave you here," he said honestly. "'Cause she's my daughter." "Because you're the woman I never stopped loving." Faith swallowed hard, her throat burning. "That doesn't erase the years you were gone." "I know," he said, voice raw. "And it doesn't erase the nights you cried yourself to sleep." Her eyes flickered. "You don't know anything about those nights." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know you had to choose between feeding her and feeding yourself. I know you worked 2 jobs until your body gave out. I know you gave her everything. While I was out there chasing success." Her jaw trembled. "I had no choice." "I know," he said, "and you were stronger than I ever was." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Amara peeked around Faith's skirt, clutching the coloring book he'd brought the day before. "Are you two going to fight again?" she asked shyly. Faith exhaled shakily. "No, baby. No more fighting." Ethan crouched to meet Amara's wide, searching eyes. "Would you like to come with me today?" he asked softly. I thought maybe you'd like to see where I live." Amara's mouth opened, then closed. She looked up at Faith. "Can I, Mama? Just to look?" Faith hesitated. 1,000 doubts warred in her mind, but when she looked into her daughter's hopeful face, she knew she couldn't say no. She nodded slowly. "Just for today." Amara squealed and threw her arms around her mother's waist. Faith looked up at Ethan. "But I'm coming too." "Course," he said quietly, relief softening the tight lines around his mouth. Later that afternoon, they stood in front of Ethan's mansion, a grand, sunlit building with glass walls and marble floors. Amara's eyes were as wide as moons. "This is your house," she gasped. Ethan smiled. "Yes, it's bigger than our whole street," she whispered. Awe and disbelief mingling in her voice. Faith stepped inside cautiously. The polished floors seemed to mock her worn sandals. The air smelled like fresh flowers and expensive soap. "Come," Ethan said gently. "Let me show you around." He led them through each room, the gleaming kitchen. It's a library filled with books. It's a garden with its sculpted hedges. But it was the last room that made Faith freeze. A bright, cozy bedroom painted pale yellow. It's a small white bed with a pink canopy, shelves lined with stuffed animals and fairy tale books. "For Amara," Ethan said softly. "I've been preparing it. Just in case." Amara ran to the bed, her little hands touching everything, her face shining. "Is it really? For me?" she whispered. "Yes," Ethan said. "If you want it." Faith felt her throat close up. It was all too much. It's too fast, too tempting. "I need time," she whispered to Ethan. "I'm not ready to forgive you." His eyes softened. "I'll wait," he murmured, "as long as it takes." The next few weeks were a blur of cautious new routines. Faith and Amara didn't move in. Faith insisted they keep their tiny rented room in the slum, but every day after school, Amara would spend the evenings at Ethan's house. At first, Faith sat stiffly in a corner while Ethan helped Amara with homework. She watched him from behind her folded arms, her face wary, her thoughts tangled in 1,000 fears. But Ethan never pushed. He never demanded anything. He just showed up. Every single day. One evening, Amara came skipping into the living room, her braids bouncing. "Daddy taught me how to play chess today," she chirped proudly. "I beat him 2 times." Faith raised an eyebrow. 2 times, she echoed, fighting a smile. Ethan shrugged, pretending to look offended. "She's a fast learner. Didn't even let me win." Amara giggled. "You're just a bad loser." Faith rolled her eyes, but she didn't leave the room. Instead, she sat on the sofa and watched them set up the chessboard again. And in that simple moment, she realized something that made her chest tighten. Her daughter had never looked this happy before. One Friday night, as Amara drifted off on the big couch, Ethan gently laid a blanket over her small body. He turned to Faith, his voice low. "Stay for dinner." Faith hesitated, her hand tightening around her old purse. "I don't know. It's dinner," Ethan said softly. "No expectations." She studied his face for a long moment, searching for hidden motives, rehearsing all the ways she could say no. But she was tired of saying no to everything, tired of living on the defensive. And Amara deserved a peaceful meal. "All right," she said quietly. "One dinner." That night, they sat at a long table in the dining room. Ethan had cooked himself spaghetti and a fresh tomato sauce, garlic bread, a simple salad. Faith ate in silence, feeling out of place in the beautiful room with its chandeliers and polished floors. But when she glanced at Ethan, she saw no triumph. In his face only hope and a quiet sadness. Halfway through the meal, Amara piped up. "Mommy, do you still hate Daddy?" Faith nearly dropped her fork. Ethan went still, and the room fell into a breathless hush. I don't hate him," Faith said at last, her voice trembling. "But I'm still very angry." Ethan's eyes glistened. "I understand," he whispered. Amara nodded sagely. "Okay, but just so you know, I already love him." Faith looked down at her plate, her chest aching in ways she couldn't even name. After dinner, Ethan walked them out to the car he'd sent to take them home. He crouched to meet Amara's eyes. "I'll see you tomorrow, Princess," he murmured. She threw her arms around his neck. "Promise, promise." Faith watched them, her heart a storm. When Ethan stood, he didn't try to hug her. He didn't even touch her hand. He only said softly, "Thank you for giving me a chance to be her father." And for the first time, Faith didn't look away. She nodded. A small nod, but the first step toward something neither of them dared name yet. As weeks turned into months, little things began to shift. Faith no longer sat in the corner when she brought Amara to visit. She would sometimes join Ethan in the kitchen while he made tea. They would talk stilted, cautious conversations at first about Amara's school, about work, about everything but the past. But every so often the memories slipped in between their words, like hidden thorns. Faith would go quiet, her eyes far away. Ethan would feel the old guilt tightening around his throat. But neither of them walked away. Not this time. One Sunday afternoon, Ethan found Faith sitting alone on the garden bench. Amara was inside painting a giant rainbow across an artboard. Ethan hesitated at the doorway, then walked over. He sat beside Faith, leaving space between them. "You look tired," he said gently. She didn't look at him. "I am." He waited. The old Ethan, the man who had once chosen ambition over love, would have tried to fill the silence. This Ethan knew better. Sometimes silence was the only safe place left. After a long moment, Faith whispered, "It's hard to trust you." Her voice broke. "It's hard to trust any of this." He swallowed. "I know." "I keep waiting for you to disappear again," she went on, her hands twisting in her lap. Part of me still hates you for leaving." Ethan didn't flinch. He nodded. You have every right to hate me. Faith finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were glassy. But I don't want to hate you anymore, she whispered. Ethan closed his eyes, fighting the sting behind them. Then let me spend the rest of my life proving you don't have to. That night, after she and Amara left, Ethan stayed on the garden bench long after the stars appeared. He thought about how much simpler his life used to be: money, deals, power, control. But as he sat there, he realized something he never had before. All the wealth in the world meant nothing if you couldn't come home to the people who mattered. And Faith, stubborn, fierce, unbreakable Faith, still mattered more than anything. A few days later, Faith called him. Her voice was tense. Ethan, Amara has a school recital on Saturday. He sat up straight. Really? She asked if you could come? His heart jumped. I'll be there. When Saturday came, Ethan arrived at the school early. He sat in the second row, his hands clasped tight. When Amara walked onto the stage in her blue dress, her eyes scanned the crowd and lit up the second she saw him. He waved, fighting tears. And for the first time, it didn't feel like he was pretending to be her father. He simply was. After the recital, Amara ran straight into his arms. Did you see me sing? She beamed. You were amazing. He choked. Faith stood behind them, watching quietly. When Ethan looked up, their eyes met. No anger, no suspicion, just a fragile, unspoken truce. A tiny seed of something new. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe hope. Maybe the first step toward something like family again. The night after Amara's recital, Faith couldn't sleep. She sat in her small living room, the lamp casting soft light across old photographs. Pictures of her and Ethan from years ago. Pictures of Amara as a baby, all by herself. She touched one frame gently and sighed. So much time had passed. So much had been lost. Yet tonight, when she'd watched Ethan lift their daughter into his arms, smiling like he had never smiled for anything else, something inside her had cracked. Not in a painful way. In a way that felt like relief. That weekend, Ethan came by the house again. No flowers this time, no gifts, just himself. He knocked lightly, as if he still wasn't sure he belonged there. Faith opened the door. She looked tired but calmer. Can we talk? He asked softly. She nodded and stepped aside. They sat opposite each other at the small kitchen table, the same table where she had once cried alone, wondering how she would ever feed her child. I don't expect you to forget, Ethan began. I don't expect you to erase what I did. Faith looked down at her hands. But I'm here, he went on, not because I feel guilty anymore, not because I want to prove something. I'm here because I love my daughter, because I still care about you. She closed her eyes, breathing in slowly. I never stopped loving you, she admitted, her voice almost too quiet to hear. But I had to survive. I had to protect her from more disappointment. I understand, he said. And you were right to do that? For a long time. They just sat there, letting the silence wash over them. Then Faith finally looked up. What happens now? Ethan took a slow breath. Whatever you want, he said simply. If you want me to stay away, I'll stay away. If you want me to keep visiting, I'll be here. If you ever decide you can trust me again, I'll be ready. She studied him, this man she had once loved, then hated, then cautiously allowed back into her life. And as she looked at him, something shifted. The walls she had built so carefully over the years, they didn't feel as strong anymore. Maybe, she thought, that was okay. A week later, Ethan came by to pick up Amara for the weekend. He waited outside in the car while Faith helped her pack her small pink suitcase. Mama, Amara whispered, are you coming too? Faith smiled, brushing her daughter's hair back gently. Not today, but maybe soon. Promise? She paused. Then she nodded. I promise. When Ethan opened the door for Amara to climb in, he looked at Faith one last time. She met his gaze without flinching. Have fun, she told them. He smiled. Thank you. As the car pulled away, Faith stood on the steps, watching them disappear down the road. Her heart was beating fast, but not from fear this time. From something that felt almost like freedom. Because maybe second chances weren't about erasing the past. Maybe they were about deciding the past didn't have to control the future. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop surviving and start living again. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take from this dramatic story? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale, give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.